The Giants have wrapped up their first full week of training camp, and that includes their first padded practice this past Tuesday. And look, I think they look good, but I don't want y'all to think I'm being biased since I'm the hype man. So I'm bringing in New York Post football reporter Ryan Dunleavy, because you know Ryan's going to keep it 100 with what he's seen at camp. Ryan, thanks for joining us, man. We need you to validate what we've all seen and what's been floating on social media. So before we go into camp overall, the first full padded practice was Tuesday. What stood out to you during the Giants' first padded practice?
I'm the anti-hype man, Brandon. I'm the guy who picked them to win 4 games last year. The first padded practice, you always look at the big guys, right? That's the first true evaluation of the offensive and defensive linemen. What was cool was they had some one-on-one reps yesterday where literally it's a guy pass rushing an offensive lineman. It's slanted in the defensive lineman's favor, and Andrew Thomas just dominated his 2 reps. That was $117 million. Looked like he was worth every penny. Unflappable on those reps. Evan Neal, I thought, won 1, lost 1. He had kind of an up and down day, and he's had kind of an up and down camp, I think. So those were the 2 guys I was really watching in padded practice, because this team's really going to go as far as their offensive line takes them. I think, the defensive line is probably ahead of the offensive line at this point, especially with 2 starters up for grabs. John Michael Schmitz at center maybe, and whoever wins the left guard job.
Yeah, I'm glad you were looking at the O&D line, because I was looking at the receivers. David Sills looked good, as he always does in training camp. Obviously, Jalen Hyatt had a couple big catches yesterday. So let's go into overall. We're about a week into camp and a week and a half away from the first preseason game against the Lions. Who are some of your top performers throughout this camp overall?
Well, I'll give you the 2 obvious ones so far. The Giants' 2 best playmakers are the Giants' 2 best playmakers. I mean, Darren Waller looks unguardable. The Giants just have to hope he can get through training camp healthy, because he just honestly, you don't know if it's they can't cover him or no one can cover him. We won't really know that till the regular season gets here, but I'm going to lean towards it's Waller dominating and not the Giants not being able to cover him. And Saquon Barkley, all the contract drama, all the Willie, won't he? I mean, he's had big runs. He's, all the shimmies and shakes and all are there. The 2 best players look like the 2 best players. And then a couple rookies have caught my eye. Trey Hawkins on defense, the 6th round pick, getting some first team reps and making some plays while doing it, pass breakups. And Jalen Hyatt at least once a practice is 10 yards behind somebody. Speed personified is what the Giants wanted when they drafted him. Maybe he only has 1 catch for 50 yards every game, but that would be a heck of a rookie season.
Yeah, every time you see Jalen Hyatt catch the ball, you're like, mama, there goes that man. Like, they really...
You're like, who's supposed to be guarding him? Because he's 10 yards behind him.
The safety, the corner. Yeah, absolutely, man. The dude has put his speed on tape day in, day out, practice in, practice out. Now, let's Riverside it. On the flip side, who needs to step their game up? The known names and some bubble guys.
Does anybody want to win the slot job? I mean, it seems like Cordell Flott has the upper hand, but he certainly has. That's almost by default. He hasn't seized it. Darnay Holmes. It could end up going to Nick McLeod, a bigger-bodied guy who has some safety and corner. Somebody needs to step up and win that job. Colin Johnson was a guy who dominated OTAs, dominated last year's training camp. He's been kind of a non-factor in training camp. He's on the bubble. If he wants to win a job, he's going to have to make more plays in a deep receiving core. So those are 2 guys I think that stand out right now as guys that I'm looking for to step up here as we get towards the first preseason game.
All right, so those are all individual performances, and people ask me, like, what do you think of the team this year? I'm saying it's just different in that building. What would you say is the biggest difference you've seen from this team, this camp, compared to years past?
The offense. Honestly, yesterday probably not the great day, probably the worst day of the offense for the camp, but in the big picture, week plus of practices, I'm used to at this point saying, the defense is always ahead of the offense. That's just how training camp goes, and making excuses for the offense. No, this offense came out humming this camp. That's a credit to Daniel Jones. That's a credit to Daboll and Kafka. They are not behind the defense at all. As long as they get protected, they look like Daniel Jones is getting the ball out fast. He's decisive. The receivers are better than they've been in the last 5 years in terms of creating separation. I've been impressed by the offense.
Well, there's the hype man and the anti-hype man. So now you guys can believe me when I tell you guys the energy is different. Just the overall playmaking is different, not only on the field, but just within the building as well. Ryan, thanks for having my back there, man.
Yeah, maybe they'll let us in the building without security too much next time, right?
We'll see. I think I might know somebody. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Brandon.